Sure appreciate you coming out, even if your coaches made you be here. So thank you. I'm Greg Lott. For those of you that don't know, I'm the director of athletics here. And just really excited that we were able to make tonight happen. The experience of being a collegiate athlete is really unlike any other. By the time you've gotten here, you've really probably taken on a lot of your role as an athlete as part of your identity. And externally, others maybe even primarily identify you as such. Oh, that volleyball player, blah, blah, blah. You've put a lot of your resources into this. It's something that you're very, very passionate about. And the results are concrete, right? It's pretty obvious when you win and lose, whether you succeed, whether you get the mark that you want. And the thing is that you do this with an audience. You do it in front of your peers, you do it in front of your family, you do it in front of your significant others. You've got to strive individually, you've got to work collectively, and there's a lot of emotion involved. Now, I think the absolute foremost purpose of our Department of Athletics is so that we can help you take full advantage of that experience for your own learning and growth, and so that when you graduate, you can authentically look yourself in the mirror and say, in large part, my experience being on the golf team, being on the football team, what have you, helped me become the human that I ultimately want to be. And that right there is the impetus behind the Cardinal Mental Fitness community. We know, research is pretty explicit, that if we want this learning and growth to occur, we've really got to work hard on creating an environment that's conducive to learning and growth. We've got to equip the coaches, the administrators, the staff with the skills to help foster and mentor that learning and growth. And then we've really got to support you all in that journey, help you learn how to navigate it. And so we've been really, really fortunate 2 years ago to be able to get this Cardinal Mental Fitness community off the ground. We've been able to welcome Dr. Steve Grafe, who's just been a huge resource to all of you. Let's give a big round of applause for Dr. Grafe. That was a nice round of applause. Yeah, he must have done something right over the last couple of years with you guys. But it's always wonderful to have him in person. And we really thought that we'd do something fun and unique this go around too. So earlier this fall, September maybe, we kicked off another important initiative. We've got this new podcast called The Bird's Eye View. We've got two phenomenal hosts in Juju and Ravyn, who you all know. Let's give them a big round of applause. And so tonight we are combining the Bird's Eye View podcast. We're combining that with the Cardinal Mental Fitness community and Dr. Grafe. And by the way, if you guys aren't subscribers already to this podcast, you need to do so. We got to get those numbers up, help them feel some love. And with that, I'm just going to kick it off and let the experts get to work.
Hello guys, as he mentioned, my name's Ravyn. I am a senior here at Otterbein. I'm on the track team. And my co-host over here is the wonderful Juju, who is a star on the basketball team. We just want to say thank you all for coming out. We appreciate it. And yeah, we're excited for this opportunity. And so we're going to let Dr. Steve Grafe kind of talk a little bit about himself. And we'll go from there.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for allowing me to be here. Greg, thanks for the opportunity, and thank you all for taking the time out of a busy Wednesday to come over here and hear what we have to say. I think it's going to be some good stuff. I am Dr. Steve Grafe. It's hard to believe that I'm actually a doctor, but I am, trust me, and I've always just really appreciated helping people live the lives that they want to live. That's kind of my main mantra, but I also recognize that for you right now, what's so important to you living the type of life that you want to live is doing well in athletics, doing well in the classroom, and doing well socially. And a lot of times that involves managing one's stress, enhancing one's mental performance, pursuing goals, and influencing others in a positive way. So I recognize some faces from the Zoom. It's good to see that it's not just floating heads at the Cardinals. You actually have like appendages and stuff. So it's good to see you all, and looking forward to a good evening this evening. Before we get started, before we wrap it up with the first question, can we just get like a bird's eye view chant? 1, 2, 3. Bird's eye view! Bird's eye view! Bird's eye view! Bird's eye view! I just had to do that.
That's awesome. Thank you. Well, thank you for that. We've really appreciated having you these last 2 years and just all the topics. Like, we've had the opportunity to be on the Zooms with you, and we got to talk to our SAC representatives kind of later in March about, some things that they really wanted to hear about and their teammates wanted to hear about. And one big one was team cohesion. And we know that, we're all here for one purpose, obviously to win, but it takes a lot more than that. And, from coaches to players, captains, whoever it is, a lot falls under that category of, staying together. So what do you think are, some big factors that as coaches, players, whatever, we can really step into to make sure that our team, comes together as one?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's such a challenge because if you think about what happens when you join a team in college, for all of us that participated in middle school and high school athletics, you participated, assuming you didn't, maybe you did club or something too, and that was standing, but if you participated in high school sport, which you all probably did, you were playing and performing with individuals that you probably had very close ties with historically. You had classes with these people, you grew up in the exact same neighborhood. So these were people that, from a cooperation standpoint and a team building standpoint, that was already locked in. Your parents knew one another, you went to kindergarten together, you might have carpooled together, you were very much entrenched. And when you're on that foundation of cooperation and rapport, it becomes a lot easier to compete with one another. And what's also interesting, though, about high school athletics is there probably was not a ton of competition. You are at a new level of college. My guess is you were probably some of the more talented individuals at your high schools and in your clubs, which means even though you were competing, you really you didn't feel the pressure of that competition, because you were already probably the starter or was going to get substantial playing time. So your sense of ego and not making the role or the position probably wasn't all that big a deal. So you're super tight in high school, and you don't really have to compete that much because you already have a position. Now you come to college, and there's no bonding there, right? There's no built-in cooperation. These are all brand new individuals that you more than likely had to meet for the first time. So there was very little foundation of rapport and connection and relationship with one another. Then you throw on top of that a finite amount of resources. You're all vying for the same position. So now you're finally competing with another person for the singular thing, and you don't have any relationship with that person. So that leads to major problems, I think, in the world of sport at the collegiate level. And so one, being aware of that can be what's going on is a huge factor. And number two is recognizing just so much the importance of building that relationship. So when coach tries to do these team building, it's not a waste of time, or it's not, oh, here we go doing cardinal bingo again or something. It's meant to try to forge those relationships that we took for granted in high school, but are paramount today if you're going to be a successful team.
Yeah, no, kind of just following up with that, building that team cohesion, and once you have kind of that dynamic where it's okay, we're all competitors and we're all competing for that same thing, and the two things that you pointed out are key factors in all of that, how would you kind of go about it when, if you, for example, you have a team that, okay, me and Juju are on a basketball team, we're doing great, but then we have someone who's still not kind of buying into it, and they're kind of bringing that negative factor, how do you kind of go about not necessarily pointing them out with it, but trying to bring them into it without making it a big issue? Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so challenging. And people are at different places in their collegiate careers, their interest level. And so those individuals can very much become a distraction on the team. if it's not handled appropriately. And so we can distract ourselves with that individual, but meanwhile, we also have 90% of the team that still wants to get after it and succeed and do well. The biggest thing, I think there's indirect and there's direct leadership, all right? Indirect leadership is this concept of walking the walk. So if you, as the majority of the team, are doing the right things, of being positive, there almost becomes a positive conformity that if you want to be part of the in-group, the in-crowd, we do things right. And if you're not doing that, there becomes the pressure of being the outsider if you're not doing those particular things. So indirect leadership would be you all as seniors, as juniors, as the collective force choosing, we're going to do the right thing. And the hope is that that person recognizes that, they want to be part of that group, and so they too start doing the right thing. Okay? That's indirect leadership. There's also direct leadership where you specify and you actually have a conversation with this person to share with them the impact that their behavior is having on the team. Sometimes that can happen from a coach, and that can be effective. Sometimes it's not effective. But also as student athletes that are participating on this team, I think leaders, whether you're named captain, a senior leader, or have influence on your team, and you know if you're one of those people or not, to make it part of your quest, your leadership curriculum, to have like a heartfelt conversation with this person. Instead, what we often do is we kind of ride them off as they don't care, they're out for themselves. But people can have a lot of shit that's going on that can impact their level of enthusiasm for their current team. They could have things going on at home in the family. They could have financial issues. They could have just had a relationship issue. They may be struggling with some mental health concerns, but they're 18, 19, 20 years old. They don't know how to talk about it. So the best way that they know how is they either distance themselves, they isolate themselves, or they make themselves behaviorally obnoxious to stand out in a negative type of way. It gets them attention. So yelling at them, saying you're being out of line, you're being an idiot, doesn't solve the problem, it exacerbates it. So with so many things that I really try to encourage with people I work with, lean in with your heart. Lean in with your heart. If you were that individual on the external, on the sidelines, if you will, how would you want a senior leader to approach you? With care, with understanding, with curiosity, and an open heart. But that's hard to do when we have our own things going on too. But it's a way to address it for sure.
Yeah, and I kind of want to pick your brain a little deeper on kind of like being in and being out. I think one thing that a lot of people here, and me personally have, being injured and how that takes a toll on, your involvement in your sport and, like the outside things, like sometimes you can't get up and go do something. But how do you think like an injury can affect your team cohesion? And then also like as the injured person or the other teammates, like how can you step in to fix that?
Anybody been injured at the collegiate or high school level where they've experienced kind of what we're talking about? Yeah, there's a lot of hands. Like probably 95% of the hands. So it's so fascinating. This is so, like we've all been through it. We all know what it feels like to be on the sidelines, literally or figuratively, watching some other, let's face it, some other schmuck in your position, right? That's how you feel about, they're not that good, right? That's how you feel about it, even if they're your boy or your roommate in the dorm. Inside, that's what you're, nice one. They just fumbled or they just kicked the ball out. I would have never done that. So regardless, we know how it feels to be in that position. But when we're not in that position, we don't care. We're just on our merry way of getting minutes, being in the position, being in the role, and there's no threat to us. There's no threat to our well-being. There's no threat to our resources. But rewind at that time when there was, remember how terrible you felt. and how much you would have loved and craved a teammate or a coach to come over and ask how you're doing, to put a hand on your shoulder, or say, hey man, you want to go to lunch or dinner after this? Check in. You know, those are things that, I mean, I'm 43 years old. It isn't even on top of my mind as a 43-year-old, and as an 18, 19, 20, 21, 22-year-old, you got other things that are going on. But this is, we talk about sport outside of sport and how it's a lesson, it's curriculum for life. If you can figure out as a human being how to reach across the sideline to somebody who's struggling, who's facing injury, and provide them some support through that time, think about what that does for you as that human being progressing through life. That is a massive skill set that you just developed that you'll take with you for the rest of your life. But you have to take that initiative to want to help other individuals out. And if you're the injured athlete, you can't just ho-hum like, oh, no one's talking to me, I guess I'll just stay in the dorm. You got to get your ass out there too. It takes two to tango. You got to get out of the locker room. You got to get out of the training room. You can't hide behind the ankle tape. Get out there. Participate in the ways that you can. Study the game more. Be a cheering person, because you know what that is? That is also another skill set. Because I got news for you. There are times, there will continue to be times over the course of our lives where we feel like we're on the sidelines. And we can pout and we can mope and we can feel some type of way about it. That's fine. But the other possible path is, okay, I'm on the sidelines. I'm still going to find a way to engage and get my hands dirty and grow and learn and develop from the experience. And if you do that, even if you're not getting the playing time, even if your name isn't in the newspaper, that human being grows up from being a 20-year-old athlete to doing some really special things in their life because they learned how to continue to stay in the game even if they're not playing in it. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Kind of adding on to that, it kind of brings us into our next topic, which I think a lot of us sometimes struggle with, is confidence on and off whatever court, field, whatever you play on. I know personally I've struggled with having confidence ever since I started playing sports because of how competitive it was at such a young age. And like, there was just, I had some cutthroat coaches, and one of them was even my dad at one point. But like, just having that confidence, I think, is a really big thing, especially in college, because like we've talked on before, like knowing your role and being able to do what you need to do to not only make the team better, but to make yourself better is a big thing. There was a quote that I heard sophomore year, I think, and it was, don't take criticism from people you wouldn't take advice from. And I was just wondering kind of how you think that quote would apply to kind of building your confidence up, not only in your sport, but just as a human being, because it's hard to do things if you don't believe in yourself.
Yeah. Who's, heads up, 7 up, who's struggled with confidence in here? Yeah, wow. Just as many people that was injured also struggled with confidence. Yeah. So there's kind of two separate things in there. So we have this concept of confidence, which I do not want to forget that I talk about. So make sure we put that on the shelf here. But it's how we handle individuals, coaches, teammates, the press, our parents, that think that they are this motivational genius by saying things that they wouldn't necessarily even want said to themselves to a other individual, in the hopes and the belief that saying those things is in fact going to motivate them and get better performance out of them. There are some cases where that's effective, but I would say by and large, psychological research shows that verbally abusing somebody usually doesn't help get the job done for the long term in terms of good performance, peak performance. But let's say that we have a coach or somebody who's a little more old-fashioned in the way that they approach what they say to you, or it was just a bad day for them and they said something that didn't come out right, or what they're saying is kind of neutral, but you're just having a bad day and you interpret it in a negative way. I always like to share with people this idea of psychological Google Translate. So what your coach said was, "Damn it, you're so lazy, get it together." Not that unreasonable for something a coach might say. All right, but you've had a bad day. You just tanked an OChem test, and that what coach just said really hit you in the negative way today, and maybe would any other day too. So the opportunity is you take that through Google Translate and remind yourself, coach, if they're a coach that once employed, ultimately wants the team to be successful. More than likely, they have a family, they need a paycheck, they need to put food on the table. So even if they're a curmudgeon that no longer cares about the game and have been all stripped of their passion over the years for the sport in which they've chosen to dedicate a life profession to, let's say they still need to have a salary. And if they have a salary, ultimately they want the team to do well. And if they want the team to do well, whatever it is that they're saying is ultimately, in their minds, a tool to help get better performance out of you because they care, at the very least, that you have the potential to be successful as an individual on their team. Fair? So, by reminding yourself through Google Translate that coach just wants me to continue to work harder, that's what this meant as I put it through Google Translate, that can take the sting out of those messages sometimes. That can take the sting out of those messages sometimes. What can also take the sting out is recognizing the humanity of this person, right? They could have things going on, doesn't make it an excuse, but no, ultimately there's gonna be people that give you negative feedback. There's gonna be people that say negative things to you. And this, once again, is a class, is a curriculum in how you're able to manage some of these negative things that come at you sometime. Whether it's a negative comment, a negative feedback, a negative injury, negative amount on the playing time, how you ultimately respond to that, how you interpret it. So that's number one. Okay. Confidence, where we all raised our hands. Confidence, the relationship that I have with confidence is a shifty one. When I first started into this sports psychology thing, confidence was this mental skill that was imperative for athletes to have. And there's still part of me that believes that. But then there's this other part of me that thinks, who's ever been in a situation where you had a paper to write? To write. Not copy, not plagiarize, and not ask ChatGPT, where you actually had a paper to write. And as you're writing this paper, you're like, there's no way I'm going to be able to finish this paper and get a good grade on it. Like, this paper is just going to be crap. Anybody been in a situation where you're writing this paper and you're just like, this is garbage. I can't believe I'm writing this thing. Yeah, okay. And then, lo and behold, you get the paper back, and you have an A on it. Has that ever happened? You actually got an A on the paper that you thought was going to be absolute crap. And I say this because sometimes our performance is like that, isn't it? Where we think, there's no way this is going to go well. I don't want to do this today. My people are watching. I'm going to screw up. Yet you end up being successful anyway. So I say that again because there's this emphasis on, I need to feel confident all the time. I need to be able to walk into practice or a game with my head held high, like I am always ready to play and I'm always confident that I'm going to do well. I'm a sport and performance psychologist. I don't know how confident I was coming and doing this tonight. There's 500 of you people. I don't know if you're going to like me or hate me or find this valuable or not. But you know what we do as performers? we execute. So the longer that I've worked with people and this confidence thing comes up, yes, do I think that there's things that people can say to oneself that can redirect the train if it's going to Negativeville? Absolutely. And I think that's important, to replace some negative thought with something positive. The problem that happens with a lot of athletes and other performers is if they're thinking negatively, they start thinking negative about the fact that they're thinking negatively, which then more negatively impacts their performance. Whereas if you're not feeling confident, just say, well, just because I'm not feeling confident doesn't mean I can't still play well. What I also find interesting about confidence is notice people always say, I feel confident. How you feeling? Oh, I'm feeling pretty confident about this. No one ever says, I'm thinking pretty confidently about this. I don't tend to hear that. I tend to hear, I'm feeling confident today. I'm feeling confident about this test. But what do we do to instruct confidence? We teach thoughts that people can say, rather than helping individuals uncover what does it feel like to feel confident. Where do you notice confidence in the body? How do you walk? What are your shoulders like? You can think back to when you had your best performance and you felt confident. What told you that you were feeling confident? Where in your body did you feel the confidence? And if you can acknowledge where you feel the confidence, then it becomes readying yourself to put yourself in a position to feel confident, even if you're not thinking confidently. And so how you allow yourself to ready yourself for sport and competition and performance, how do you ready yourself? You rely on your training, and you rely on those experiences in which you performed very well, and you remember, well, I didn't always feel confident. I wasn't always thinking confidently, but I still did well. I still executed. So I still have this interesting relationship with confidence. By and large, I still think if there's confident things that you can say to yourself that help redirect the negative train, do it. Of course, do it. Okay, absolutely. And remember, just because if I don't feel confident doesn't mean that I can't perform well. Okay, that's number 2. And number 3, see if you can uncover what you need to do with your body prior to a competition to feel confident. To feel confident. To feel ready for competition. That could be a physical warm-up. That could be listening to certain music. That could be watching a highlight tape. Whatever gets that feeling in you. That's how you can reconnect with confidence. But if you're not thinking confidently, we think of all sorts of things during competition. Man, that hot dog smells good. Wow, the cheerleaders from the other team. You know, whatever it is, we think all sorts of things, and then it's like, okay, gotta play, time to execute. I mean, that's the nature of sport. I mean, LeBron James, early in his career, do you think he felt confident? The chosen one, do you think he felt confident, all this pressure on him? And he still won championships. Still won MVPs, even though he probably didn't feel confident all the time. So I'm beating a dead horse, but I've had this ever-growing relationship with confidence, and people so often beat themselves up for not feeling confident or not thinking confidently. And you can still have an incredible, satisfactory life and performance, even if occasionally you doubt yourself. And in fact, you will doubt yourself. That's part of the gig.
Yeah, so I think another big thing of confidence and kind of
I got worked up on that one. I needed to take a little spin around the chair.
Is leadership. And, either being a captain or a point guard, holding a leadership role on your team. How do you think that confidence plays into that? But then, also talking about you're not always going to feel confident, but how can you still step up in that role and make sure that your teammates know that you're there for them?
You know, a parent never stops being a parent if they're having a bad day. The child would be in pretty dire position if that was the case. So a parent is always going to be parenting. And I think we can take a little bit of that into the world of leadership in a few different ways. Well, one, leadership, just like confidence, kind of gets put on this pedestal, like, oh, what a confident person. Leadership can kind of do that too, where, oh, they're a senior captain, they're a senior leader, and then it's almost like you get a name tag. And once you get that name tag, you become a leader. And anyone without that name tag, guess what? You can't lead. I'm sorry, you don't have influence over other people. But as you hear that, you recognize, well, that's bullshit. Because every single one of us have the capacity to influence another person in a positive way. And I think when it boils down to leadership, I think leadership is really just influencing people, having the capacity and the ability to influence another person, hopefully in a positive way. We can think to many leaders over the course of our lives whom did not influence people in a positive way, yet they had the name tag of leader. They influenced others. And so I think any of us have the opportunity to influence, even if we're having a bad day. But just like the parent wakes up and sees that 3-year-old child asking for them to parent them, we too need to realize, all right, I'm not feeling it today, but if I care about this team, or even if I'm selfish and I just want to squeeze as much juice out of this opportunity that is college athletics, whatever about the team, but I know it's a good resume builder, even if you're selfish, which I don't like encourage, but I like to think of the other side of the coin sometimes too. You still have the ability and the capacity to influence other people, but taking it on yourself to do that, ultimately that you get better as a human being, the other person that you're influencing gets better as that other individual, and the team gets better overall. And honestly, if that has positive influence within the team, you athletes go into the classroom or into the cafeteria, and you have a more positive mindset. And you feel better because you've had this great influence on one another. Guess what happens to the cafeteria woman or the cashier? They see that smile on your face, they get a smile on their face. Then they go to the bank on the way home. That clerk at the bank gets a smile on their face because that person that they're working with had a good day as well because you guys brought a good day. Now that clerk, now that cashier, now that lunch person all go home. And they're smiling around with their kids at the kitchen table. And what used to be an argumentative household might be a little less argumentative. Which means that kid then goes to school and that teacher of that kid has a better experience. Like, it's getting a little bit namaste out there, I recognize that, but why couldn't it have that impact? And it all starts with waking up and realizing, well, parents are going to parent regardless of whether they want to parent. I can influence in a positive way regardless of whether I'm feeling it that day, because I know we as human beings need it and rely on it and can really benefit from it.
Kind of touching a little bit more just on leadership. I know from personal experience, I'm really bad at not saying no when I need to set boundaries. So I was kind of wondering if you had any advice for those leaderships or leaders out there today who are bad about taking on more than they probably can handle at the time, and how they can go about just kind of setting that boundary, like, hey, I appreciate that you feel like I could fill this role, however, I just can't do it today, without feeling that guilt behind it.
Ooh. Well, that's a magical phrase that you just used. I would put that in your phone notes, because verbatim, that is something really great that you can say. First off, to the extent that we can, be aware of what you think your boundaries are. I think a lot of us just walk around and we don't even think twice about where our line is. And then what eventually happens is we end up crossing that line like over and over and over again because we haven't really even thought about what is that line? What's that line in my relationship? What's that line with my coach? What's that line with my teammates? And not that we have to overanalyze everything, but just like a little acknowledgement and awareness of where am I right now? Do I have the energy for this? Is this sitting well? That awareness can really come in handy. Because sometimes what can happen, your knee jerk is, I don't want to do this. And then you sleep on it and you realize, oh wait, I guess I do have the bandwidth for this and this does seem kind of cool, I will do this. Conversely, you could say, yeah, I'll do it. And then the next day, you would get asleep on it and you're like, wait a minute, why did I just commit to that? That's not what I wanted to do. So in those situations, recognize the earth is still going to spin. The earth is going to spin. They're going to find somebody else to do that. And it's going to be all right. And in terms of the guilt, honestly, I think you just need a few repetitions of doing that and recognizing the world doesn't fall apart. And people don't hate you when you say no. Or people don't hate you when, I don't have the time for that. I'm too busy. But we feel like they will. So then we say no. Then we feel guilty about it. But then, you know what? The next morning, the sun rises, and the birds, they start to chirp again. And the mailman is walking and delivering mail, right? And there's a puppy dog and an ice cream vendor and a little rainbow. And you recognize, you know what? Everything's still okay. And I don't mean to poke fun, but folks, that's the deal. That's the deal. And I still feel it too. I still feel that guilt. But the older you get, you do realize, you know what? It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. And once you start to realize it's going to be okay, that guilt will start to lessen a little bit. If you do feel that guilt, give yourself acknowledgement. It's okay that I feel guilt because this is important to me. It's okay that I feel guilt because this is important to me. And I recognize it's not my responsibility to do everything. It's not my responsibility to have to do anything. But I'm going to choose to do the things that I'm capable of doing, that I have the bandwidth for, and the things that start to feel like, I don't know if this is right for me at this particular time or ever. Feeling the trust in the oneself to say no, ride the wave of guilt until it ultimately ends within the next day or two, and then you move on to the next time it happens. Yeah.
Awesome. We kind of what you were talking about, how doing the things that you feel like you can do, and with all the things that we've talked about tonight, going into this summer of, we all know we're going to get training programs and things that we should be doing over the summer, but how can we continue to build our mental and our physical without dealing with, some of us deal with burnout or things like that. So going into the summer and making that decision, you know what, this is what I can do today, but also physically, but also mentally.
Yeah. It's a great question. I love actually having an opportunity to speak because you'll get a lot of, I think, professionals in the field that really, and there's time and place for this, I think, but kind of really overemphasize how much is required for the mental aspect of sport. The classic phrase is, mental skills and the mental aspects of sport is often overlooked and undertrained. And if you ask a lot of people, how much of sport do you think is mental? People are going to raise their hand at 75%. And then you ask, well, how much time do you spend working on the mental? And they say, well, 25%. And we as sports psychologists, that's often our lead-in because it's tricked you. You're not spending enough time on this thing that you're saying is really important. So that's why you should pay me to work with you all, right? They don't say that, but in a roundabout way, that's why you need sports psychologists. That's why you need, but the thing is, and I'm here to demystify, it doesn't, we're not playing the Masters. And it's not even like Rory McIlroy worked with Bob Rotella, a famous sports psychologist, mental skills consultant. It's not like he saw that guy 8 hours a day for every single day of the week since the last time he played the Masters. You know, you might have a phone call with Bobby R, you know, once every couple weeks, maybe. So what real mental fitness is, it's kind of like eating. Right? You don't go home and you always have to make this masterful dinner or breakfast. You just make what you're able to make, you eat it, and it nourishes you. It provides you nourishment for that moment, for that meal. And I think the same thing can be applied with mental fitness. Right? You think about what are the particular demands that you're facing as an athlete, whether it is feeling more confident or you can't really focus, you find yourself not focusing very well. You identify like a couple interventions, and a lot of it is just over the course of the day or over the course of the performance, you have your little mental fitness snack. It's your mental fitness snack. I had a period in time when I was pretty depressed and anxious. And I was at Ball State University, not bragging, and I was there for my pre-doctoral internship. So in the quest to get your PhD, you have to do a pre-doctoral internship, all right, where you do psychotherapy for a full year. And I did it at Ball State University in their counseling center. And I remember being really overwhelmed, and there was a lot that you had to do, and I'm seeing clients full time for the first time ever, and I'm like, do I even have a big enough heart, big enough empathy to work with all these people every single day of the week for the next 52 weeks? So I found myself in a bit of a tight spot. But what I noticed is as I would walk the hallways occasionally, just to give myself a little bit of a breath, I would tell myself, Steve, what's important now? What's important now? And it would focus me to that hour, to that client, to that email, to whatever it was. It would focus me in that moment. That was not me calling a psychologist and talking to him for 4 hours or going to some like Brandon Bouchard weekend retreat in Miami. That was me just occasionally as I'm walking to go take a shit saying, Steve, what's important now? So we talk about how important is the mental aspect of performance? 75%. Well, how often do you work on it? 25%. There's the mental health boogeyman going to jump around the corner. You're not spending enough time. All it takes is that phrase that for you connects you back to reality, for you connects you back to humanity, for you connects you back to your heart, to your partner, to the thing that most matters, to the breath. Whatever it is, it's not massive. It's enough. And sometimes all you need is enough to get you back in the game, to get your mind right, to feeling right, and to living the life that you want to live. It doesn't take a lot. Sometimes it just takes enough. I need to take another stroll.
The last thing that I would love to know kind of more about, especially being a senior, so I'm finishing out my track season within the next couple of weeks.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I was just wondering how you kind of help the seniors or those who are moving on from sports, how they can go about that in a positive way rather than kind of dwelling on the past, or also just learning how to separate not only like their personal identity but their sports identity from each other so they can go on to still be successful people with whatever they choose to do in their path.
Yeah, that's a great question. And for those of you who are wrapping up, like, good for you. There was, in fact, light at the end of the tunnel. So congratulations. First off, there can be a grieving process. And that grieving process comes with it a variety of emotions, right? Whether it's denial. These are classic. Like, you think about them when somebody's dying or when somebody died, the stages of grief. But any death is a grieving process. And the death of your athletic identity is, in fact, a death. Right? So there's denial. I can't believe I'm actually done. This is crazy. Right? is like acceptance, okay? Like there's times where you do kind of feel like it's all right. Another A is anger. Sometimes you feel angry about the whole thing. I can't believe it. Another one is B, bargaining. If I could just have one more play or one more quarter, one more at bat, that's another one. And D is depression too. Sometimes you can feel pretty depressed and sad about it. So if you feel any of those emotions, that's okay. That's okay. That's part of the process. It's part of relinquishing that identity. So that's normal, number one. Number two, in terms of identity is concerned, I encourage folks to the extent that you can, try to bring in other aspects and interest of your life. If I was sitting on a one-legged bar stool and somebody came and took an axe, like one of those lumberjack games, and just took the post out from underneath me, boom, I would fall down and I would hurt myself, and it wouldn't be good because I only was on one pillar. And if you as an athlete is only on one pillar, when that pillar's gone, you feel pretty flat. You feel like you're falling. So, to the extent that you can, have a couple more legs under the stool that you're sitting on. Because then, if one goes, you're a little bit wobbly, but you're still upright. I'm not sure if the physics of that actually works out, but I think you understand the metaphor. So the more that you can get interested in those different types of things is huge. And then the third or second and a half one is there are so many transferable skills that you being an athlete and spending 4 or 5 or 8 years here doing what you do will translate into life. As much as maybe you don't want to believe it, like you're so excited to kick down the doors and leave oh no, I didn't get anything from the experience. No, you got plenty. And if you're the type that's like, man, I don't want this to ever end, don't worry, it's not. Because you have cardinalness in you forever. Whether you remember aspects of it or not, like those conversations that you've had, those character building things, those tough mornings, those tough nights, those hard workouts, all of those things have shaped who you are as a human being. So then when you go for that job interview, you're a little less nervous than that individual who never had to come out at the bottom of the ninth. When you go and you have so much to do because it's a long day and the baby's crying and your partner had to go to work and you're like, oh my gosh, how am I ever going to make it through this day? You're going to remember, maybe you don't think about it, but your body remembers, dude, I did 2 a days or 3 a days. I ran those stadium steps. I can handle the laundry today. And it's silly, but our whole life, we're collecting these experiences that we can either view those experiences or experience those experiences as something that happened to us or something that happened for us. And if it happens for us, then every single day, you're having an opportunity to collect new experiences that are making you ultimately a better person.
Thank you so much for everything you've done for us today, Steve. Could we all please give him a round of applause?
Yeah. And if I may, as we wrap up, thanks. I haven't even conditioned I don't think I've washed my hair in like a week either, so it's good. I'll take a whistle. There's, in terms of tangible ways that you can continue to work on mental fitness and such, we did just do basically a 1.5 years of Otterbein mental fitness community. And those resources, like Steve and the gang who was ever on that particular week, there's Zoom recordings as well as handouts. So if this conversation didn't freak you out and then instead intrigued you a little bit to learn more, go to the Zooms, go to the website, download those Zooms, those recordings, and check them out. Check them out. Put it on 2x speed if you want. And while you're mowing the lawn or whatever, just digest it and absorb it, and that's a simple way to get a little more mental fitness going on in your life. But folks, I just really appreciate the opportunity, the head nods, the laughter, the whistles, and your attentiveness. And again, if there's just a little something that you gathered today in terms of the importance of just bringing your full self and really just your heart into whatever it is that you're doing, then I think you all are going to be all right. I think you all are going to be all right. So I appreciate you guys for a great line of questioning. It was really a pleasure. What do we have? What's the time? Are we done? Almost. Oh, okay.
Just on behalf of Otterbein Athletics, hopefully I can speak well and say that we're all appreciative of all that you've done for us, not only tonight, but in these meetings that we've had throughout the course of these few years. I know I've benefited from a lot of things that you've said, and I've taken it to heart, so I really do appreciate that. Greg and Stacy, we want to say thank you to you guys for all that you've done, especially helping putting this on. We wouldn't be here today without you guys, so thank you.
And we'd like to say thank you to Steve, our cameraman, and CJ and Haley, who obviously isn't here with us, but just for them and making the podcast, Bird's Eye View, a real thing and not just something in our imagination. And I also want to say thank you to Ravyn, because she's been the best co-host ever. And if you would like to sit and talk with me for an hour once a month, please let me know. But yeah, and we'd just like to thank all of you guys for coming out. And if you want to listen to us blab any more than tonight, you can look up the podcast on Spotify and on YouTube. So thank you all. Have a great night, and we'll see you around.